All right. Listen, I'm so blown away to see all of you. It makes me, uh, I don't know what exactly the language is, but it makes me, yeah, I don't know, but it felt good to see all your faces and to see you share your names and where you're at right now. Um, all right, so we'll go ahead and get started. I'll share the link one more time in case you need it. This is kind of the plan for today. We're going to start with the warm-up exercise. And to warm up, we're going to read this poem that I love. It's called The Forgotten Dialect of the Heart. It's by a poet named Jack Gilbert, who passed away in 2012, I believe. So I'll go ahead and read it. And in the meantime, just listen. If you'd like, you can leave notes on the Google Doc so you can make comments about lines you like in the Google Doc, and then we'll talk about it for just a second. But really, I want you to get started writing, and I want to spend as much time as possible writing. So we'll spend the majority of the time doing that. This is The Forgotten Dialect of the Heart by Jack Gilbert. How astonishing it is that language can almost mean, and frightening that it does not quite. Love, we say. God, we say. Rome and Machiko, we write. And the words get it wrong. We say bread, and it means according to which nation. French has no word for home, and we have no word for strict pleasure. A people in northern India is dying out because their ancient tongue has no words for endearment. I dreamt of lost vocabularies that might express some of what we no longer can. Maybe the Etruscan text would finally explain why the couples on their tombs are smiling, and maybe not. When the thousands of mysterious Sumerian tablets were translated, they seemed to be business records. But what if they are poems or psalms? My joy is the same as 12 Ethiopian goats standing silent in the morning light. O Lord, thou art slabs of salt and ingots of copper, as grand as ripe barley, lithe under the wind's labor. Her breasts are 6 white oxen, loaded with bolts of long fibered Egyptian cotton. My love is 100 pitchers of honey. Shiploads of thuya are what my body wants to say to your body. Giraffes are this desire in the dark. Perhaps the spiral Minoan script is not a language but a map. What we feel most has no name but amber, archers, cinnamon, horses, and birds. I love seeing people highlighting different parts. Um, if there's a particular line you want to talk about or anything that hits you, go ahead and unmute yourself. And we'll talk about this just for a second before I get you started with the warm-up exercise.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes.
I word. First of all, this poem won fucking fire. Literally from the first line, the kid was shook. Literally, it's funny because like as artists, as writers, like I know personally for me, like when I didn't have the means to communicate effectively, like in terms of like my communication skills of like my emotions, thoughts, whatever, like writing pen to paper or whatever means was the only thing that made sense to me. The only way that I can convey myself, and writing has always been a saving anchor. And but it's always been like as I've like developed and like trying to like master the craft of writing and poetry and all of those things, like the challenge for me is trying to convey in words these undescribable feelings of like love, pain, and make it not more so, I guess, taking my unique experiences and making it universal, but like making it also relatable because, you know, as the human experience of like, I think of like James Baldwin and like Audre Lorde, and like taking these universal truths of like pain and love and, you know, a lot of things that like people want to like distract themselves from, like how can I make them relate to that? And I think that's always the challenge of like using language and like, you know, having these underlying meanings and all of those things. like how do I convey myself in a manner that like sometimes like with the English language, like I know for myself, like I speak another dialect, and some of the words that are in my dialect of aren't in English. So it's like so it's always a tricky thing of like figuring out and how to master and finesse language to kind of do what I want kind of thing. But yeah, that's it.
Thank you. Yeah, that's really beautifully said. Anyone else want to share real quick, and then we'll get started with the writing?
I've been thinking about, this is Irion here. We say bread and it means according to which nation? Because similarly to what Naima, I think your name is, what they just said about what I liked about poetry and about writing too was trying to put words to these things. But what I loved about writers that to me did it well was that they somehow were able to do that like impossible task, and it was by all of the things that surrounded it, that surround the feeling, the words that surround the feelings, that kind of hand you and spoon feed you what that feeling is. And it changes by like your context, and the beauty of it is different in every person that reads the line. And I think that was just wonderfully captured. And we say bread, which we all know bread, we know what it is and the how necessary it is. But it means according to which nation, which means in any nation it isn't untrue, but it just has a different truth everywhere that it is. And I think that like fed through the rest of the poem with all these like specific examples that I could not put my finger on, but because of what was around it, I could grasp anyway.
Yeah, that's perfect. Thank you, Ariane. So if you scroll down, we have this, I made like a little worksheet for us. This is really just so you can see it. What I want you to do is grab a sheet of paper or actually, you know what? Can you save the image that's on the laptop if you want to keep working on the laptop? Is that something that you'll be able to edit? Maybe not, huh? I made this chart because what I want you to do is basically set up two columns, and on one side I want you to write down an emotion, say love, which is the example in this case, and then I want you to convert it into a bunch of images. So this example comes from the poem that we just read, right? In the poem, Jack Gilbert says, let's see, my love is 100 pitchers of honey, right? And so I think that that's a cool conversion, right? A way of making his love feel more exact. So what I want you to do is maybe start with love and come up with like 3 or 4 conversions. My love is, you know, since I just saw Irion, my love is 2 bottles of mild sauce, right? Like, make it unique to your own context, what your love is, but come up with some examples. Let's say 3 examples for 4 different emotions. You can choose the emotions, whether it's love, anger, joy. Joy is another one that comes from the poem, right? My joy is the same as 12 Ethiopian goats standing silent in the morning light. And I want you to try to stretch yourself with these conversions. So, it's easy to make the jump from love to flowers or something like that. Try and stretch yourself and see if you can find some weird kind of conversions that still make sense to you. Do people have do people have questions before we get started?
Just to go over it again, 3 different emotions and 1 example of each of those emotions.
Let's do 3 emotions and 3 examples for each emotion. So for love, you would do, 100 pitchers of honey, 2 bottles of mild sauce, and 3 doves in the morning sunlight or something like that, whatever, right? And again, just try to make it unique to your specific context. And I just see this comment from Ashley Morales about the way that love is, there's even different words for love, right? So you can use whatever type of love you want, right? If you want to choose love in a different language, whether it be Spanish or French or Creole or whatever, You know, but I want you to give me 3 emotions and then 3 conversions. Go ahead. I'll give you about, let's say it's 6 minutes, and then we'll come back. And I'm going to mute myself because I'm going to be doing this writing with you. take another second, finish up whichever one you're on. Again, this is just a warm-up exercise. All right. Did anyone come up with a good image that they want to share? Like a good pairing of an emotion and an image?
I have this one for I wrote for anger. Um, my anger is a child who is distant from his father.
I love that.
I came up with one for joy. I said, my joy is every particle of the sun. With each ray, a smile erupts from my heart.
Beautiful.
I came up with one for discomfort. Discomfort is the bottom. I'm sorry. Is the milk crate at the bottom of the stack?
For sure.
I wrote one for love. Love is the chiquitas learning how to move their hips like Selena.
Hey.
I'll read one that I wrote for love. It's kind of like too wordy. I'm still trying to figure out like which words to get rid of, FYI. But it says, my love is the gaze I give you when I lock eyes with you. When words fail, eye contact means I see you, I understand you, I love you. Just looking someone directly in the eyes.
Yeah, I love that. Maybe one more?
Sure. I wrote one for fear. It's my fear is 1,000 rats scurrying under the floorboards because it's a pretty scary time right now. So.
Word. Thank you, everyone. So the reason why I wanted to start off with that is because one of the things that, and why I wanted to teach this workshop in the first place is because I was feeling angry, as I have been feeling a lot these days, angry at a whole lot of things, whether it's like the ineptitude of our government or, you know, the people at the grocery store that hoarded hella groceries and now, you know, I can't find pasta if I want to make pasta or whatever, or, you know, angry at myself for not being more patient, for not being more quote unquote productive. And so I was like looking for poems that might help me understand my anger a little bit better. And thank you, Megan. And um, and like the Poetry Foundation, which is just one resource, they have poetry collections for grief and for various holidays, but they don't have a poetry collection for anger. And I think that anger is something that we tend not to associate with poetry very often. And I wondered why that is. And I wondered, what is it about anger that makes it, you know, I don't know, that makes it something that we don't necessarily turn to in poems all the time. And so like, I try to do anger in this exercise and it's hard to translate, or I don't want to say translate, but it's hard to come up with images for anger for me. Maybe it was easier for some of you, but I'm interested in anger because like I said, I think there's a lot to be angry about and I think anger is justified. And so that leads me into what we're gonna use as model text for the rest of the workshop. So just like we did with Jack Gilbert's letter, we're gonna look at the first two paragraphs from An Open Letter by Tim Siebels. This is the intro to his book, Buffalo Head Solos, which you can see here. There's another book that I really recommend. These are the second and third paragraphs. So I'll read these and then, maybe we can talk about it for a second, but I want to make sure we get to the two kind of poetic texts. And so the poetic texts are the poem Feeling Fucked Up by Etheridge Knight, and then the song Basquiat by Jamila Woods. All right, so this is an open letter by Tim Siebels. In fact, part of what energizes me is all the naysaying I hear about what poets and poetry can't do. Poetry will never reach the general public. Poetry shouldn't be political or argumentative. Poetry will not succeed if it's excessively imaginative. Because the first people I heard saying such things were poets, I used to believe these notions were born of thoughtful consideration and humility, but now I see them as a preemptive apology, a small-hearted justification for the writing of a hobbled poetry, a poetry that doesn't want to be too conspicuous, a poetry that knows its place, that doesn't mean to trouble the water, that is always decorous and never stomps in with bad breath and plaid boots. But why not? Why not a sublimely reckless poetry when the ascendant social order permits nearly every type of corruption and related hypocrisy? Why not risk more and more? So much is at stake. This culture, deranged by both spoken and unspoken imperatives, mocks the complexity of our loneliness, our spiritual hunger for dynamic meanings, our thirst for genuine human community, for good magic and good sense. And given the growing heap of human wreckage, why not approach language and its transforming potential with a ravishing hunger, with the ferocity bordering on psychotic? What the hell happened to the notion of poet as town crier, rabble rouser, court jester, priestess, visionary, madman? Given the way things have gone, it's almost impossible not to be overtaken by despair. Writing poems in SUV America can feel like fiddling amidst catastrophe. But if one must fiddle, shouldn't one play that thing till it smokes? And in stirring the words with our tongues, our paws, our long nights, and the smoldering tangle of our brains, maybe we could move our general kin to listen. By the way, the highlights that y'all are doing on the document look so good. It makes me really happy. So thank you for adding your notes and highlights to the document. Is there anything that kind of stands out to you that you want to comment on? Go ahead and unmute yourself.
I just wanted to say that I really love this idea. I'm an English major in college right now, and my concentration is in creative writing. And over the last several years, it's been hard for me to find ways to like talk about my life, which isn't always pretty and glamorous and everything like that. And like have people receive that. And so I love this because it really kind of gives a permission to like not always have your shit together and like to not always write about the pretty things and to find beauty in the things that might be ugly or might cause anger and things like that. So I really love this whole section. And I also think it kind of encourages people to like not only write about those things, but find action to those things and like purpose in them. So I really liked that ending part, especially like really trying to get the people to listen about like different experiences that might not be like your own. And I just loved it.
Word, thank you. Anybody else?
Yeah, I went to this concert and this artist had a mantra that she repeated several times that was, "I'm not afraid of my own rage." And that kind of made me go into a line of like just setting aside time to write specific rage poems. And I also have been thinking a lot about like what you were saying about like not being able to find poems about anger. And it's like, I feel like there's a lot of anger and rage found in like slam poems, and I can find those videos online, but then I don't find published poems. And so I don't know what that says about like anger as a, I don't know, professional, professional emotion, maybe it's an unprofessional emotion. And for that reason, it's not accessible to us in like these like more elite spaces of organized poetry or something like that, and institutionalized poetry, question mark. But I really appreciate what this reading is calling for us to do.
Thank you. Oh, there's a question for you, Michael. It says, who's the artist who had the mantra?
Oh, this is Diana O. They're really cool queer Korean American theater maker in New York City. They have a Patreon, so check them out.
Word, thank you. Anyone else?
I have something. What stood out to me was the part where it said, our spiritual hunger for dynamic meanings, our thirst for genuine human community. That sit heavy with me because it kind of draws on what everyone's going through right now, where I've seen so many people in posts and like conversations with friends just saying like, I hope we come out of this with people being more nice to each other and compassion and expressing these things and people that are around us. And I am already seeing that in my own apartment building when I go to do laundry and people are like, how are you doing during this time? That never would have happened unless this was happening. And I feel like that ties into the anger aspect of why do we have to glorify something? Or if you are writing about anger, you don't have to end it with something that dynamically relates it to something of joy or beauty.
Yeah, I think there's also this pressure, like we live within a culture that prioritizes quote unquote wellness, but only if it's, like you know what I mean? Like if it's commodifiable wellness, only if it's wellness that leads to a certain endpoint, right? Like if you are still wrestling with the messiness, or if you are in the midst of anger, it's not commodifiable in the same way. It doesn't have that pretty product at the end of it, right? I hear you. Yeah, and thank you all to everybody commenting in the comments, in the chat, I should say. There's a lot more there if you want to read that. Yeah, absolutely. To everything you all said, thank you. Let's take a look at the first poem. So this poem is called Feeling Fucked Up. It's by Etheridge Knight. This is one of my favorite poems of all time. I love teaching it. There's a lot of curse words in it. So if you have children around and you don't want them to listen to the curse words, then this is your opportunity to get out of the room. I'm gonna read it out loud, and then we can talk about it. Feeling Fucked Up by Etheridge Knight. Lord, she's gone, done left me, done packed up and split, and I, with no way to make her come back, and everywhere the world is bare, bright, bone, white, crystal, sand, glistens, dope, death, dead, dying, and jiving, drove her away, made her take her laughter and her smiles and her softness and her midnight sighs. Fuck Coltrane and music and clouds drifting in the sky. Fuck the sea and trees and the sky and birds and alligators and all the animals that roam the earth. Fuck Marx and Mao, fuck Fidel and Nkrumah and democracy and communism. Fuck smack and pot and red ripe tomatoes. Fuck Joseph, fuck Mary, fuck God, Jesus, and all the disciples. Fuck Fanon, Nixon, and Malcolm. Fuck the revolution. Fuck freedom. Fuck the whole motherfucking thing. All I want now is my woman back so my soul can sing. That alliteration, though. That's right, Christiana. Word. So, what are some of the lines that stood out to you? Somebody said mood.
So like just in general, that whole like last half of where Etheridge is just talking about all these sort of greater problems we should be worried about, and then I guess especially as like, you know, people of color or like any other marginalized population or population, we're supposed to like really care and be like really thoughtful about all these greater institutions, but how often are we allowed to be selfishly angry, you know? And it like illustrated that so well. Like right now I don't give a fuck about like my causes or my politics or like these institutions that I'm supposed to like really think about critically all the time. Right now I just like need to like grieve and feel for me and not like my people. So that was nuts just to read. Like, wow.
I really like the lines "fuck the sea and trees and sky and birds," and then a little bit lower when they write "fuck Joseph, fuck Mary, fuck God, fuck Jesus, fuck all the disciples." Just because these are things that like normally during a breakup we turn to, like people turn to religion, people turn to nature to find healing. But to say like "fuck all that shit" is like so powerful.
Yeah, one of my favorite lines of this poem is the line break that begins with "and alligators." Like, what about alligators made him be like, fuck the sea and trees and the sky and birds? Then he was like, and alligators too. Fuck alligators.
I also really like the line break between fuck Joseph, fuck Mary, fuck, and then God. Because it almost feels like it's both a curse and also it could play the double role of an exclamation, like she's just calling out. The line breaks were really dope in this poem. I think I like the line breaks almost more than I like any one line.
What about from the first stanza? Because we're spending a lot of time talking about the second stanza, but that's the second stanza. Are there moments in the first stanza that you like or that stand out to you?
I think I like "the world is bare" portion. "The world is bare, bright bone white, crystal sand glistens." That part, it's like everything's too bright, too pretty, and I'm in this darkness.
I really enjoy the line, "Lord, she gone done, left me done packed up and split," just because of how it sets up like it's been building up. It's not just a continuous type of thing. It's most of the time it's a built up of rage, and I relate to that for myself just because as someone who doesn't know how to communicate through the anger inside, I usually like to bottle it. Sometimes it usually leads to that like overflow. And so like when setting up the line of like unpacked, it's like seeing like the actual like anger getting like rage is like spill all throughout or so.
No, I'm right there with you, Miles. That line, it sets up the whole poem perfectly, right? It's like just gets right to the subject matter, and then it's like a slide at the playground.
I love the opening word "Lord," which suggests this may be like a specific and direct prayer.
Yeah,
I like
directly putting the anger there. Yeah.
I like the combination of anger, love, and revolution in one poem, and thinking about like not being able to process or even envision a revolution if you don't have love. Like if you don't have, so like I don't have something to fight for, so why am I gonna fight?
I appreciate the barrage of her at the end of the stanza, just because I think any poem that has to do with love, whether it's like a bad feeling of love or a good one. Using her as the subject like already conjures a kind of love and already tells us how you're supposed to feel, the writers are supposed to feel about this person, and just the constant usage of it. And I guess that reminder then goes into a barrage of fuck this, fuck that, because I have to reject like what her makes me feel.
I feel like the idea of like creation comes up with the second line of I with no way to make her. And then there's sort of a play on this, like the world with all the animals roaming on it, you know, like created by God, but also the creation of a revolution and also the creation of all these systems we live into. So it's kind of, it's not only like grieving the loss of her, but also recognizing like the failure, like I couldn't create, like I couldn't keep her, I couldn't make her.
Yeah, those are all really great points. So we'll kind of keep it moving because I want to make sure I give you time to write at the end. One of the things that I love about this poem is, you know, the title is called Feeling Fucked Up, and that sets up an expectation right away that immediately it's going to jump into, you know, kind of like curse words and here's everything that's fucking me up. But the poem instead kind of does like a slight shift, right? The first stanza, there is no cursing really. And while there's like pain, there's also these moments of softness, whether it's like specifically that barrage of hers or, you know, even kind of like the kind of yearning that is in that first stanza. The poet kind of makes us wait until the second stanza before they kind of get into that barrage of fuck Coltrane and this and that and everything, right? One of my questions, and I just want you to kind of think about this and hold this, is are there different rages in the poem? Are there different textures to the rage, right? Is it rage in the poem or is it something else, right? Someone was saying about how the poem, one of the things that I loved was the comment about how there's love, revolution, and anger in the poem. And if you can't get love, then it kind of fucks up everything, right? It makes it so that you don't care about everything else. You have to like figure out this thing first. All right, so now we're going to experiment. I want to play you the song Basquiat by Jamila Woods. Before I do, I want to read you this quote from Jamila about the song, right? And it comes from an interview with Pitchfork. If you click the link down at the bottom of that interview where it says Jamila Woods and Pitchfork, you can get to the whole interview. So the question is, how has the art and life of Jean-Michel Basquiat impacted you? And Jamila says, I really love his art. And in an interview I saw with him, he's asked about what makes him angry. And Basquiat just pauses for a long time and says, oh, I don't remember. Basquiat didn't present as someone who was angry all the time. He was the radiant child, the genius child. It was almost like that interviewer wanted access to this interior emotional space. And Basquiat was like, I'm not actually going to grant you that. Or there's so much shit that could make me angry, I can't even make a list for you. I related to that because I feel people have often said to me, oh, you're so nice, you're so quiet, you're so shy, almost like it's a compliment to not be angry. But I don't think it should be a compliment when there's so many things to be angry about. With social media, the whole idea of needing to express your anger about a particular topic feels different in this current moment than in the past, especially around the time when there were so many police shootings of Black people back to back. I saw Black artists who said, I'm not going to talk about this on Twitter from my mental health. And others like, we need to talk about it publicly. It's our responsibility. It's a different sort of pressure. And so in particular with this answer that Jamila gave, I'm thinking about how anger, I mean, in all emotions, right? But our emotions belong to us. And so we can choose who we grant access to our interior emotional space, right? So I'm gonna try playing this song for you. You have the lyrics on the Google Doc. Let's see if this works. Let's see. Not yet, huh? All right, I'm having a hard time. Dang. All right. I'm gonna do this.
I told you that I meant it. I'm reclusive, I snooped it. I already know what you're thinking about me. Are you mad? Yes, I'm mad. What make you mad? I don't fucking know. You should tell me so. You done done it. Are you mad? Yes, I'm mad. What make you mad? I can't recall. I paid the fifth. Right, it's on the call. Yes, did I not implore you? My girl, no. After I did not implore you. My girl, no. They wanna see me angry. They wanna see me bear my teeth, yeah. Stop, baby. I smile in your face, but the always on high. Don't get back. I told you that I'm anti. I'm reclusive, I'm stupid. I already know what you're thinking about me. Mad? Yes, I'm mad. What make you mad? I don't fucking know. You should tell me so. You done done it. Are you mad? Yes, I'm mad. What make you mad? I can't recall. I picked the fifth. Right, it's on the wall. After all, did I not employ you? Can't police my joy, no. After all, these 99 employ you. Can't police my joy, no.
Yeah, can't police mine, can't tell me when to release mine. What you looked into and then find brought up the same news. The last time I was at hiding, that was just private, that was their diary. Why you entitled? Why you crying? Say I'm too quiet. Watch how they gon' flip it. That's not how I meant it, but that's how they write it. I ain't hear about it in the written column. If they gon' misquote me, what's the point of talking? It is not promotion. Only nonsense and it's not important. Not headline I was unimportant. I didn't talk about it. I don't talk about it, but that's how I like it. I don't go outside so much they don't invite me interview and I just don't even for the spine. Are you mad? Yes, I'm mad. Yes, I'm back. No, I don't elaborate. I said, oh yeah, I had to say no. You ain't got the answers. Wait, no, human is the accolade. Don't be dreadlocked and tired of face. That's the story the gravitate. Stone top, they want what I don't got. Devil's advocate, I saw them play both sides. That's the line, they'll cross for exposure. Recluse, reluctant to share most time.
After all, these teeth are not employed. You can't police my joy. After all, my smile is not employed. You can't police my joy. After all, these teeth are not employed. You can't police my joy. After all, my smile is not employed. You can't police after my smile is not included. You get what is my joy. It's like you after trying to provoke me. The shit hereditary. The pressure rising in me. Some days I'm almost get free. Some days I wish I could be. So many women in me. You beggars can't be choosy. It's like you want me to be. You trying to provoke me. The shit hereditary. The pressure rising. Some days I almost get free. Some days I wish I could be. So many women in me. You beggars can't be choosy. It's like you want me to be. You trying to provoke me. The shit hereditary. The pressure rising. Some days I'm almost get free. Some days I wish I could be. So many women in me. You beggars can't be choosy. It's like you want me to be. You trying to provoke me. The shit hereditary. The pressure rising. Some days I'm almost get free. Some days I wish I could be. So many women in me. You beggars can't be choosy.
Oh, cool. Wow. Ariadna found the Basquiat video that Jamila references. So if you look in the chat, you can find that. Word. What stands out to you about the song, or what kind of what stood out to you from the song?
After getting the information about the Basquiat interview and like, oh, I don't know what I'm mad about, like, or oh, I don't know, and then Jamila just being like, yes, I'm mad, I don't fucking know. Like, it just seemed to like link so much better in my mind with that background information.
Yeah, and then the following line in some of those parts that is like, you should know you done it, right? Like, you know why I'm mad. Why are you trying to pretend like you don't know why I'm mad? Anything else?
Yeah, and I always think every time I hear that song, like it's so chill and it's so gentle. Like if you weren't paying attention to the lyrics, you wouldn't think it's an angry song. But then when you think about the lyrics, yeah, it's furious. And so I think that contrast actually makes it even more angry. I don't know.
Yeah, I love that. And it's a reminder that anger can take many shapes, right? Anger doesn't just sound one way or look one way. It can live in many different ways.
I also think the lyrics of the song and the way that the song is delivered are making a point about how we, because of our gender, because of our race, find ways to hide our anger and make our anger as palatable as possible.
Mm-hmm.
And so then when Saba's verse comes in, it's like it's hitting you in the face because it's so different from the rest of the song. And I think that mirrors how our anger in the real world, once we're done like keeping a lid on it and we actually let it out, right? People are surprised. People are like, oh, I didn't know you were holding all of this in this whole time. And we're holding it in some ways to protect ourselves, our jobs, livelihoods, etc.
Word. Yeah. So thank you for all of that. What I want us to do now is, if you look on the Google Doc, there's another kind of like little kind of spreadsheet thing that I created. There's actually two of them. So the first one, mapping rage, is starts to kind of get into this idea of what are different types of rages that we're holding right now. And then the next one kind of continues to build the vocabulary of imagery around those rages. So what I want you to do is write down, if you're able to, the different types of rage that you're holding right now, right? So like I was saying during the introduction, there's rage for the ineptitude of the government and the way that it's endangering lives. There's rage, at my brother works in a factory, and so like at the fact that like his factory hasn't been shut down and he's in danger. There's rage at the uncertainty of not knowing when I'm going to work again. There's the type of like um, rage at myself for feeling like I'm not prepared enough, this type of like guilty rage. So take a second and write down the different rages that you're holding in right now, or that you're holding, maybe not holding in, and just list them out. We won't get into the second part, which is kind of assigning different senses to those rages quite yet. I'll let you get into that later during the writing exercise. But for now, I just want you to think about the different rages that you're holding, and I want you to write them down. So take like 2 minutes to do that, and then we'll move straight into the writing prompt. All right, and now that you have maybe a few different types of rage written out, I'm going to ask you a kind of quick series of questions, and I just want you to answer with the answers that come to mind. So the first question is, what grows from this rage? What grows from this rage? So you can do this for each of your different types of rage. And the answer could be nothing. What grows from your rage? Second question, what does your rage destroy? What does your rage destroy? What does your rage destroy? All right, two more questions. The third one is, what does your rage eat? What does your rage eat? What does your rage eat? What feeds it? Then the last question is, how do I want to put this? Well, I'll stick with this. What fruit is your rage? What fruit is your rage? All right, so the writing prompt is, I want you to write a poem that begins in rage. I wrote and leads you somewhere else, but I don't even know that it needs to lead somewhere else. It can begin in rage and it can end in rage. Yeah, it can begin in rage and it can end in rage if you like. It can go somewhere else if that's where your poem takes you, but don't feel that pressure. It can start in rage, it can be rage in the middle, and it can be rage in the end if that's what it is. You can write the poem in the style of Etheridge Knight's Feeling Fucked Up, or you can start with Jamila Woods' question in Basquiat, are you mad? Yes, I'm mad. Remember to use imagery, and don't be afraid to craft a loud and or imperfect poem. For one, this is a first draft, but then for two, I think, like we've been talking about, there's value to different types of poetics and to like a crafted messiness, to a crafted type of sprawlingness. It doesn't have to be tight and precise always. Are there any questions before we get started? All right, if you have any questions, you can message me in the chat. You can send me a direct message, but otherwise go ahead and get started, and then maybe we'll check back in. All right, so I see someone asking me to repeat. So once again, the prompt is in the document here. I'll copy it into the chat. But the prompt is to write a poem that begins in rage and leads you somewhere else, or write a poem that begins in rage and ends in rage. You can write the poem in the style of Etheridge Knight's Feeling Fucked Up, or you can write the poem in the style of Jamila Woods, right? So beginning with Jamila's question, are you mad? Yes, I'm mad. And then seeing where that takes you. Use imagery. Think about Jack Gilbert's poem, and see if you can be creative. Remember that the kind of given language that we're given about rage, whether it's fire or whatever, isn't the only way to think about that, right? See if you can invent some new ways to think about your particular relationship to rage in this particular moment. Go ahead and get started writing, and then we'll check back in, let's say around 8:25 or so, just to like check out, and then yeah, we'll keep it moving. Thanks, y'all. All right, y'all. So this is what I want to do. Because I want to make sure I let you out on time, we'll kind of stop writing here. I just wanted to get a chance to say thank you to everyone for being a part of the workshop. If you have any feedback for me, I'd love to hear it. You know, I'll post my email down below so you can send me feedback, or if you want to send me the poems that you write, I would love to read them. Like I said, I just wanted to say thank you. And yeah, I hope that was generative. I hope that, yeah, I don't know what I hope, but I appreciate it. And if you need to go, I totally understand. If you want to stay on and share what you wrote, then I'll stay on here and we can do that. But for everyone that has to go, I totally understand. If you have like Netflix to binge, or people to feed, or cats to feed, or anything like that. Like I said, thank you for being here, and I'll stay on here just in case people want to share what they wrote.